Describe to me how you see careers in this era now.
Very high learning agility and fast. Like you need to be able to learn fast and you need to learn it yourself because sometimes they're not even out there. If you don't stay abreast of what's happening in the world around technology, you'll be left behind. And typically there's no set solution to that. So you need to exercise your muscles around adaptive leadership and adaptive challenges. My favorite dish is called Jiding, which is the chicken bits with the chilies. That's from Sichuan province.
Annella, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite, Sital. Good to see you.
Pleasure. Before we get started, let me kind of do a quick intro for the viewers. So we've got, and I've just used my aid memoir for now, but Annella is currently the head of HR for Microsoft, so vice president for Microsoft HR across Asia, 20 plus years in human resources. Previous role with Amazon Web Services leading APJC for Amazon's people strategy through their transformative growth years, really. And then before that, some time with Coca-Cola across the region. Annella's got 2 master's degrees from Cornell and Tufts University in the US. And the part that's most interesting for me is the fact you've just lived in so many places. So obviously you're Filipino, so from Philippines is home. You live in the US, Philippines, Indonesia, India, Greater China. Anywhere I missed?
Australia, there
you go. Such a diverse range of places. And what's been, I won't ask you what your favourite place because you'll upset someone, but we know this region is all about food, yes? And so what would you say is your favourite part of the region or in terms of food? And is there a dish that comes to mind that's a favourite of yours?
I love Chinese food because I lived in China, but the Chinese food in China is different from anywhere else. Yes. My favorite dish is called Jiding, which is the chicken bits with the chilies.
That's Chinese, is it?
Yeah, that's from Sichuan province. That's my favorite.
Okay. And your favorite Filipino dish? Adobo. Yes, I've heard. Yes, no, it's an amazing dish. No, this region is all about the food, so everyone's got a favorite. So I thought I would ask. I like starting these conversations by learning about the background of the individual. And the part that I'm really fascinated by is something that with leaders is what shaped them. And so I often find that there's normally a period of time or there's a role model or something happened that shapes their leadership style, but also given the context of where we are today with tech innovation, disruption, future work. Is there a period in your time where that shaped your career that is now lending itself to how you're operating today?
Yes, there is a particular time. So many moons ago, I was asked to go to China with my husband. And we were moving there for his job. But then I had 2 job offers. I was actually asked to join one of the big 4 accounting firms and be part of them. But I also had a job offer with, back then it was called Watson Wyatt, now called Willis Towers Watson. And one of the roles was to be the head of the Beijing office for this company. And so one of my mentors, because I was torn between choosing a big 4, which is very established, thousands of people in China at that point in time, or doing this new role, which is to open the Beijing office. So I asked one of my mentors, and he said, well, Annella, you can look at it 2 ways. One is you could be a big fish in a little pond, or you could be a small fish in a big ocean. Which one are you? So I was cocky enough to think I could be a big fish. So I took the Willis Towers Watson job. And I have to say that was the hardest job I had in my entire career because I was opening the business from scratch. There was no office. I had no customers, no people.
Just straightforward, straightforward role, yeah?
Right, exactly.
What year was this in, roughly?
This was in the late 90s.
Okay.
So, and 1998, I believe. And so still very early in China's opening up.
Yeah.
So it was very local at that time. And
so I mean, language, compliance, the whole thing.
Yes. In fact, they had just started putting the Roman characters on the Chinese signs. The road signs. I couldn't even ride the subway because I couldn't read Chinese, and they didn't have, English or Roman characters then. So hardest job because I didn't have any of that.
Before we talk about, I mean, it sounds like a crazy thing to do, but an exciting thing to do. How did you come to that decision? Because many people often have big decisions to make in terms of risk and reward. Yeah, I mean, you're cocky, you're saying, in terms of being brave, but and particularly, I'm talking from an Asian lens. Quite often, in many Asian cultures, that big four would be automatically the thing you do. So how did you kind of process that thinking, and what made you ultimately make the decision to move to China?
Well, I think it was more of the, I was moving because of my husband's job, so it wasn't because of me. So that decision was made on my behalf. But what I thought about was, well, startup would be interesting because I'd never done a startup. Secondly, my goal was to try something different because I was doing everything but HR consulting. So I thought I'd give it a try. And I think I'm generally an adventurous person. I like to try new things. I like to try new food, go to new places. So it was a bit part of my DNA to be adventurous. But I didn't understand how hard it was going to be to do a startup in China with a different language. I'd never done HR consulting. I'd never been in HR. And it was daunting, I have to say.
And what was, having kind of made that decision and then realizing it was, gosh, gulp.
Gulp, yes.
And I mean, look, you're looking at your CV, you've stayed the course. So talk to me about what it was like actually. How did you tackle it? How did you deal with it? And what made you not give in and, take a step away? Because you moved for your husband's move and not your move directly. What kept you there?
Well, I think the good news was it was a firm. It was a multinational firm. So my boss, Paula DeLille at that time, was very supportive. She helped me, understand what needs to happen, what do I need to build, where do I start. So she kind of gave me my start and some direction. But then I was on my own. So I had to look for an office. I had to hire people. I had to get, things organized. And thank goodness I was able to quickly find the person who was helping me find an office and so on. So, but it wasn't that easy because I didn't have the language, the skills at that time. And I also had no idea, what size of office would I need? How many people do I hire? It was all very difficult in the beginning, but then I put a plan in place. I put a business plan, which I'd run through my boss, and then she quickly helped me. And she just said, just go ahead and get the office started. And then what you can do is slowly hire the team. And then I said, okay, that's the easy part. Now, how do I get customers? So how do I get clients? And I realized very quickly that everybody was in China because it was that point, it was just opening up. And so every multinational consulting firm was in China. Big Four, all the HR consulting firms who had been there longer than we have. And so it was really hard to try and figure out how I was going to get clients. And then one person who was another one of my mentors says, well, if there are all these HR consulting firms in China, then you have to figure out who's using their services and who's not using their services. So I asked myself that question, who's not using HR consulting? And then I realized it was state-owned enterprises and local companies. So I focused my attention in that.
One of the most difficult market to go after,
A very difficult market to go after. But then I found out from another mentor that he was with the China Business Council. He said, oh, Annella, McKinsey does all the work in state-owned enterprise reform. Go talk to them. So I did. They were in my same building. So I walked up they took the lift up, and then I met some people from McKinsey, and then they shortly thereafter started to engage in potential opportunities. And we first
as a partnership,
first as a partnership. They would do the strategy consulting and I would do the HR consulting, and that sort of started how I ended up.
So you've taken a leap based on a bit of courage and a bit of direction, taken the gulp, come back up above the water, sought some advice and guidance and coaching, And then by the sound, just taking the next step in there's a bit of, you figured it out. I mean, these are some classic startup traits, aren't they, really?
Yes.
And then you started getting some clients through that government agencies and the McKinsey partnership. Where did you take the business to ultimately?
Well, so we had a little office, and then we had to get a bigger office because we got more work. So once we completed one, then there were more state-owned enterprises that needed reform. So we just kept going one after the other, and we got bigger and bigger clients. And I think what happened thereafter was it just set up the consulting firm for success. I was there for 3 years, and to this day, they're still in China and doing well. So
it sounds like a fascinating and scary for some people experience. When you reflect back, what's some of the kind of key 2 or 3 lessons you learned from that experience, would you say?
I think one is trust your own capability, and because you're the only person that knows how much you can push and test yourself and test your limits. Secondly is really having courage, and it is a gulp moment, but it's having the courage to try. And then the third thing is use the ecosystem of people around you who know what the work is. So I used my boss a lot. I used her team. I used the folks within the HR consulting firm, knowledge and capability. And when I won the project, we were a very small office, but then I knew that we had thousands of people all around the world that I could rely on. So it wasn't me that's just going to deliver the project. It's the whole firm that's going to deliver the project. So it's really relying on the whole ecosystem around you to be able to deliver.
Got it. So a combination of knowing yourself, and you knew you had an adventurer DNA. So trusting yourself, having the courage and bravery to have a go, and then knowing you're not on your own.
You're not on your own.
Using people around you in that respects. So when you reflect on that experience now, and you kind of know where I'm going with this is, we'll talk in a moment in terms of how that then lends itself to this market now. But this market now, and the market you're in, is technology. And really, if we look at the workplace, the world of HR, the world of careers, the one acronym that kind of is on everyone's mind is AI. And AI, technology, disruption. And I suppose I've got to ask you the question that's everyone's mind, the elephant in the room, is about jobs. So what's your perspective on AI and other disruptive technologies and the impact on jobs, job market and career?
Well, if you look at the history, right? If you look at the first, second industrial revolution, there was a sense that, with advanced manufacturing, jobs would go away. Well, yes, agriculture jobs went away, but then automated or machine automation of manufacturing started coming into play. And that actually increased jobs. And then the next revolution, which is the more digital revolution, you saw data processing, manual processes all went away or slowly went away. But then you started with more technology, IT, more robotics, things like that come into play. And then we saw, this AI start to come into play, right? And what you're seeing now is jobs aren't going away. In fact, they're actually increasing. It's automating things like customer service, sort of the more repetitive roles. Yeah. But then you're seeing an increase in jobs in the AI space around the technologies that are required. But then also you're seeing other jobs increase, the jobs in cybersecurity, because now you're using much more technology. So you see, there's, and my understanding is there are over 3 million jobs in security open today. Quantum is also increasing. Quantum jobs are increasing. There's research that shows by 2030 there will be 1 million jobs open. You're seeing also other technology, green technologies are up and coming. So while certain jobs shut down, other jobs come into play, right? And so I think it's really exciting to see that jobs don't necessarily go away. In fact, if you look at the charts, the jobs just continue to go up. They're just different jobs.
Different jobs. No. Yeah. So you're right. There's a piece there, and there's a fear amongst some people. I think it's the pace. I think the pace at which it's moving is probably scary for many individuals. But the 2 points I'm getting is one, that there'll be different jobs, And there's a kind of a trait there around having to kind of be a bit more adaptive, I think. And the thing is that there are some stats thrown around in terms of new jobs in AI or quantum related, but we don't quite know what the jobs are. In terms of early stage and from a Microsoft point of view, what kinds of jobs are you seeing already that are new jobs? And they might be tech related or not tech related.
Yeah, I mean, the jobs in AI, for example, I mean, we're looking for AI technologists that can program, right, and bring products to life quickly. So even in our world now, we can't get enough of AI talent in the market. And so I think those are coming up. I think if you think about how you now use that technology to further automate or make the work much easier to do because you've got technology that's able to do that, then you're going to see, these jobs just change. You'll see now more voice required than in the past. So it's not that the jobs just disappear. They morph or evolve into different things.
What about, I mean, the roles you say, absolutely, the AI related and adjacent jobs to quantum, for example. What about for people outside technology whose jobs and industries are getting disrupted? AI, I mean, there's a quote around, every CEO across every industry is now looking at AI as a tool to optimize and innovate, and therefore that will have an effect on people outside technology. What's your advice to people outside technology who are a bit concerned about jobs and career paths?
Well, I think one of the things that's really critical is you have to continuously learn. Like the one thing that you cannot let go now is continuous learning, and having that growth mindset to want to learn new things. Because if you don't stay abreast of what's happening in the world around technology, you'll be left behind. So we can't afford to let go of that mindset that, okay, I don't know this technology today, I need to learn it, or at least I need to learn how to use it in my daily life so that I can continue to be relevant in what's happening in the world. And we've seen that all throughout history, right? Those who get ahead are the people who stay abreast of what's happening in the world of work. Even the way work has evolved today. I mean, if you think about pre-COVID and then today, how different the jobs and the work has been in these two worlds. And if you don't apply yourself to what's happening in a changing environment, then you'll be obsolete. So,
absolutely.
For me, it's about staying relevant, staying current, and making sure you're not going to be obsolete.
So the learning and the growth mindset is fundamental.
Absolutely.
And for those outside tech, I'm trying to kind of keep it for a broad audience, is there's a piece there around learning AI, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but there's also a piece about other skills that become more important in this type of world. What kind of skills and traits are going to be more important, would you say, in this next phase? I know there's going to be more waves of technology, but what's some of the things that you think from a career point of view is most important now for individuals?
Well, I think it's first of all, you have to, as I said, you have to stay current. So you have to understand what are the skills that are in demand. And there's lots of publications that, if you go online, you'll see what are the skills that are in demand. In fact, you can just go on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn will tell you the top skills that are required. So one is you have to know what those are. And then if you don't have them, you should at least do some work in trying to acquire those skills. But I think there's always going to be just plain skills that are today, like how do you apply yourself to basic technologies? So you should be very proficient in using a computer and using that basic technology. Like you can't be shy about not learning those skills, right? So I think there's just basic skills that are applicable. The thing that's important is some skills are relevant today, may be completely irrelevant tomorrow. So you have to just continuously learn. And then, as I said, there's enough out there in the world, in the web, that you can just research. Okay, what are the hot skills? Like I said, cybersecurity is a very hot skill. And that doesn't mean that you have to be a tech expert in cybersecurity. No. Some of those are really about monitoring and, finding trends and insights and data. So data analytics become very, very critical. So it's not cybersecurity skills per se. That could be programming related.
Yeah.
But then the application of cybersecurity skills is actually analysis of data.
Yeah.
So there's adjacent skills that are required.
Taking a skills-based approach in terms of what's a skill set I've got and how can I apply that in the new world.
Yes.
Would that be fair?
Yes, very fair.
And just maybe one step further beyond the technical skills, there must be there's a bunch of different skills that are going to be even more important that are human skills, if that makes sense, so non-tech skills. When you look at your kind of your skill sets, what are some important things you think are going to be important skill sets wise?
Well, it's learning how to get along with people.
Yeah.
It's managing people.
Yeah.
It's being able to be part of a team because nobody is an island these days, right? So being able to work, having teamwork, being able to get along. Again, back to continuously learning, being learning agile, being change agile, because what is today may not be tomorrow. So being change agile and being able to change and reinvent yourself every single time. Yeah. It's also being able to, just analyze things, use data, use insights. There's a ton of data today to be able to analyze what's important. And then I think the other thing is that, relationships matter. So building strong relationships, whether it's at work, whether it's people in the different industries, it's whether it's folks that are outside the work that you do. Yeah. Because today, there's no job description that really captures what companies are looking for. In fact, the job descriptions are almost less relevant today because if they're looking for the qualities individuals have, then the job descriptions make less of an impact. Yes. But it's more about, what your experiences have been in the past and then how you've applied yourself through those experiences. Yeah.
Reflecting back on to earlier in the conversation, something you've talked about fundamentally about learning, about the change agility piece and transferable skills. When you look at the career advice you give to individuals today, bearing in mind your background and I kind of scribbled down the things that you learned in China, Annella, and you were saying trusting your gut and your own self. You talked about the importance of using people around you and having some courage. With that in mind, and the things you've said in terms of the traits that are needed today, describe to me how you see careers in this era now.
Yes, so I think one of the things, again, back to very high learning agility and fast. Like you need to be able to learn fast and you need to learn it yourself because sometimes they're not even out there. Yeah. Like when AI was introduced in Microsoft, that's less than 2 years ago. And I had no idea what it was. Like I had to learn from scratch, right? And I had to experiment with prompts. I didn't even know what a prompt was, So, and so somebody said, well, what do you advise people? You have to be a prompt creator. Yeah. You have to learn how to invent prompts on your own. So for me, it's that just learning fast and adapting really quickly to that change. I think the other thing that I think is really important is learning from others. Like to me, I find that when I ask someone, there's within the organization or even outside, experts, people who know this stuff, they're very willing to share their knowledge. The other thing I like is we have access to LinkedIn Learning. Actually, there's a lot of learning material out there. There's podcasts like this one. There are podcasts. There are videos. There's YouTube. There's no lack of options to learn. I mean, even... It's amazing when you Google stuff or when you search stuff, how much information is out there to learn. And there's a lot of free information as well. So even a little information can lead to learning more or wanting to learn more. So for me, there's no lack of ways to learn. And there's a lot of free material out there that's accessible.
So no, and the point you made, the learning agility, and I think the curiosity that comes with that, the desire to learn.
Yes.
And it really back to what you're saying in China, there's plenty of people around you.
There's plenty of people around
even
you.
in that environment that don't speak English, maybe, but there are people that are willing to help you in that respects.
There were a lot of people who were willing to help, and that's the thing, right? Especially when you ask, like it's funny. We don't ask because we're afraid.
Yeah.
We don't ask because we're afraid to look not smart, or we're afraid that they'll think we're an imposter, or we're not good enough, or we're not capable enough. So people don't ask, and I'm never shy to ask.
Yes. It's back to the phrase you use. It's about the humility of asking, and the good thing is we're all learning together.
Yes,
it's a new wave of technology. So how would you describe? How would you describe this era from a career point of view? Then, in terms of career management, how would you describe it?
It's indescribable, actually, because some of the things that I've learned recently around AI, I would never have imagined. Like, for example, there are prompts that will eliminate my coaching skills because they can just ask an AI tool to say, given what you see in the way I work, through my inbox, through my emails, through my messages, through the information that comes into to me, what are my top 5 areas of opportunity? They don't need me to tell them that now. There's some tool that's actually being able to do that. So even as basic as coaching, which you think, oh, well, that's only a human that can do that. Well,
that's evolving fast.
It's evolving fast. Yes. They can do that.
And,
they can even do it on voice.
I mean, to that point, there was talk 6 months ago about personalized learning bots in a few, and it's here. And so,
it's there.
But where you're going with this, what I'm kind of sensing is there's a organizations can't keep up with the pace in terms of career support development because they don't know where it's going. And some of the traits that you had in China and the things that you were saying are part of your DNA about wanting to have a go, learn, seeking out, asking people, it's self-driven now. And I think
it is self-driven.
Would that be fair?
It's self-driven. I mean, it's all about you. Because no one can make you do something you don't want to do, right? So you have to be self-motivated. But you also have to believe in yourself. Like, you have to believe that you can do it. You can believe that you can learn, believe that you will get there, or not. And then you course correct. I mean, that's the thing about your career, right? It's not linear. It doesn't go in a straight line. I mean, it will go this way, it'll go backward, it'll go sideways, it'll go every which direction. And you have to be able to go with the flow of the non-linear career paths. And actually today, very few are linear career paths.
Absolutely.
Before it used to be like when you graduate, let's say you have an accounting degree, you graduate, you're going to go into a big accounting firm, and then you're going to go become a senior accountant, and then a manager, and then so it used to be quite linear and well defined. Yeah. But not anymore. I don't see these careers being so well defined anymore. You say
that, but even like I think from a recruitment point of view, when organizations are hiring, we like someone that's done something different. When I've hired before and someone's had a break and done something random and it didn't work, quite like that because that shows they've had a go, they've failed, got some humility, learning, resilience, and all. And that's why large organizations like people that have gone startups and maybe failed. It's okay because it gives them that fearlessness in that respects. Yes. So that given that's the world we're in, and they're the traits for success, and the career is self-driven, it's risk-taking, being okay with falling, failing. Talk to us about leadership. So how can leaders create a culture environment that is conducive to those kind of individuals?
So I think leaders today, they have a lot to think about, because before there was the formula to being a leader, right? Now there is no formula. You'll have all kinds of individuals in your team these days, and you'll need all kinds of individuals, all ages, all walks of life, all countries. And so you'll need to learn. You'll have to have this ambidextrous leadership, which is leading left and right, up and down, every which way, right? So you have to be able to adjust to the various different needs of the people that work for you. Because you're not, again, because we're non-linear, in a non-linear world, you're not going to get people exactly the same anymore to get into a team that's effective. So you need to be able to lead in that kind of environment.
Got it. So that adaptive leadership style is
adaptive leadership and ambidextrous leadership is important.
And so if I think, look at kind of, we'll talk about culture in a moment. When you're looking at the kind of leaders you're hiring, not for today, for tomorrow at Microsoft and other firms that you talk to, and their succession planning, and they've got their boxes ticked. Is that shifting in terms of what you're looking for in terms of from a manpower planning point of view and succession planning point of view? And if so, how?
Well, I think we still have some traditional ways of looking at succession, right? Especially within our firm, because we want to be able to promote from within.
Yeah.
So we'd like to be able to grow our talent internally. But in cases where we're not able to grow them fast enough, then we have to hire from the external party, especially if there are new skill sets that we don't have today. Or we'll do an acquisition, just like we've done an acquisition for some of the new technologies that we don't have. And so from that perspective, there's just different ways by which you bring your teams along into this journey. Got it.
And from a leadership point of view, I mean, it's like I find all these things, it's very, very easy to say, well, leaders need to be this or that. Many leaders are going to have to go on a journey themselves, aren't they, in terms of evolving and developing those adaptive leadership muscles. What are some of the things that from a pragmatic point of view, that you see leaders can be doing to start building and adapting their style to be relevant for this different era?
I think it's always easy to be given a technical challenge because there's a technical solution to a technical challenge, right? Now you need to give yourself an adaptive challenge, which is something that is different from a challenge that you've never done before, something different than what you've done. And typically there's no set solution to that. So you need to exercise your muscles around adaptive leadership and adaptive challenges, which is the opposite of a technical challenge because there's not necessarily a fixed solution set. So that's where, they're on opposite poles of each other, but they're so intertwined with each other. In fact, they're polarized, but they're also intertwined. So you have to have both. You have to be able to deal with technical challenges as well as adaptive challenges. And that's not easy to do because there are people who are on one spectrum where they say, I'm a technical person, so I'll solve it this way. And you have other people who will say, oh, I'm good at doing this. But the reality is when you're looking at a new world of situations, they coexist. And so that's the part of ambidextrous leadership that you're going to need, is you have to have both of these challenges as something that you need to be able to solve for or adapt really quickly.
Fascinating. It's interesting times.
Interesting times.
I mean, like all these things, the ecosystem makes a big difference. So we've talked about the environment changing and how individuals will change to succeed and thrive from a career perspective. The leadership that's needed and the shifting gear that's needed for the leaders. Often companies have policies and processes that are set by HR. And talk to me about how HR policies and approaches need to adapt to facilitate this kind of culture.
So it's interesting. There are, so organizations still need policies, obviously, to be able to pay people, to be able to comply with government regulations, and so on and so forth. So there's still going to be that level of requirements. But we've seen companies today that have really tried to do away with hard and set policies. They work on principles.
Okay.
So if you think about Amazon, so I worked for AWS at one point, and so they follow 16 leadership principles, right? And they use that to guide them in place of some policy. So there's policy, but then there's principles. And so, and that is a good way of trying to discern, well, if there's no policy, can I use the principle?
Yeah.
So, for example, the number one principle is customer obsession, which is also a Microsoft principle. So, in absence of a policy and you're dealing with a customer, then your default is, if I'm customer obsessed, then I will do what's really good for the customer. And there may not be a policy that bumps up against that. And by the way, because things are moving so fast, the policies can't catch up.
No.
So you use the principles to figure out how you're going to operate within the system that you have. So if we say we are going to be diverse and inclusive, then again, I mean, look at the diversity and inclusion work today as compared to even 5 years ago. It's completely changed, right? The way we look at it. So again, if you're looking at principles, then you can have a frame of reference that says, I will work with what's right based on the principles that I have.
And my judgment at the
and
moment.
use my judgment, use the company's, I would say, mantra on how they operate, and then you'll make the right decision. If you make a decision on behalf of your customer, it's almost never wrong, right? Because you are there as a business to serve your customer. I think that's why, when I joined AWS, there were 14 principles, and then they added 2 more. So now there's 16. So it evolves as well, but there are some principles that are just enduring. So I think a principle is a principle, and it can be enduring in how you apply it. So
that's really, really, really insightful. One quick question, specific question. So we've talked. There's a bit of a theme in this conversation around change, risk taking, failure. When you look at how organizations promote and reward individuals, it can sometimes not always engender long-term risk taking, long-term view. How does that need to evolve and change? And maybe you have a view from having been in an Amazon type environment or sitting in a startup environment. How do you reward and promote people that's commercially viable, but also creates that right environment?
It's funny. Many years ago, when I worked for another tech company, we used to look at people who were very different. Like who we had one particular VP that decided to go and live in India. And very disruptive thinker. And he was ahead of his time in terms of, we need to be in India. We need to set, John Chambers at that time, okay, this is Cisco. Yeah. John Chambers at the time decided we were going to go to India because that's where the tech talent is. And this was in the early 2000s, right? And then one of the other VPs decided to go there. And I remember looking at the reward structure. Well, how do you reward someone for that? Right? Because it's not in the playbook. It's not in the policy. It's not in the program, right? But then you realize that because if you were to see the results may not have actually been the results they were expecting because it's a startup, right? It's a startup world. So there has to be room in the performance system to reward people who take those risks, who will go to India to start up a business, who will take a risk at a new technology. But our systems don't really allow that. They're pretty much in the box. So I think what companies need to do today is recognize that the contributions tend to be shouldn't be just on the organization, but the individuals. And so you need to reward the behaviors that you're trying to espouse as a culture. Yeah. So if you're a culture that needs to take risk, then you need to reward for risk. If you're a culture that wants to reward innovation, then you need to, put your money where your mouth is, which is you then. Then,
have you any practical ways in which you've already started doing that at Microsoft already, in terms of how you reward or just how you view talent and their performance based on longer term aspirations?
Yes, we do. I mean, we look at people who take risks. We look at people who provide, solutions that are big and different. We reward people who do breakthrough thinking. So we do reward that already today. And we make sure that they stay within our organization. But then we're also starting to think about, well, how do we reward different talent that we're bringing in today? That, for example, our AI talent that we're bringing into the organization today, we want them to continue to invent and innovate, right? And so we need to be able to find a way to award and reward that innovation.
Yeah, and it's a fine balance bringing people, and I think this is not just a technology company thing, because I think companies cross-sector are going to bring technical people in.
Yes.
And often from small companies.
Yes.
And how can you provide them with the right environment and rewards mechanism that doesn't stifle that innovation? That's kind of sometimes large companies can sanitize those kind of those creative traits in that respects. I've got a question that I think many parents have got on their mind, but before I go there, before we wrap up, given your experience, you've lived in Asia, across the region, you've led businesses and HR teams across the region. What are some Asia-specific nuances that you think are important for multinational firms or individuals to understand that's different about this region? There might be pockets of the region, in terms of a lot of things we're talking in terms of career management, leadership, and even HR policy, that often people don't fully get.
So I think it's important to have knowledge of the markets that you operate in. It's not a requirement, but if you go into a market that you've not been before, let's say you decide you're going to go to China, you need to have some knowledge about the markets to be effective, right? So for me, for Asian talent, really know your markets, because that's a competitive advantage for businesses. They hire individuals with that market knowledge so that it accelerates the company's trajectory within those markets. Now, however, it's also important that you don't necessarily just bring in people with that market knowledge. You also want to bring people who don't have market knowledge, who can then challenge the current thinking within that market. So it's a combination of both. You want a mix of people with local knowledge of how businesses are run, how people are led, how businesses operate in those markets, and how you sell to companies in those markets. But you also want to bring in outside folks who then bring a different perspective, because then they bring something that maybe you haven't thought about. So it's the diversity of knowledge and skills that make companies really thrive in any market.
It's a great insight. It's a both, yeah?
It's a both.
It's both. No, absolutely. Hey, before we wrap up, I want to ask a question, and that's probably on many people's minds. So we talked about jobs early in the conversation and disruption and technology. There are many young people that are worried, potentially, both from an economic and market point of view, but also in terms of jobs. What's your advice to college leavers, school leavers, on how they should think about their careers?
First of all, my number one advice is get a job. It doesn't matter what job. Don't wait to get the perfect job. Get a job. Because I guarantee you that's not going to be the job you're going to land in for the rest of your life. But get a job, because that will give you work experience. So if you're worried about not getting a job that you want, just find one.
Be flexible.
Yeah, be flexible. Find one. And then you'll first of all, you'll learn how to be in the workforce. You'll learn how to go to the office if you need to go to the office. You'll learn how to collaborate. You'll learn how to be in a team. You'll learn, what's important in the workplace. You'll just learn that. It's different from being in school. So get a job. That's my first advice. I think the second advice is follow your passion. What are you most passionate about? I don't know if I told you this, but I was a nutritionist.
Yeah, yes, I've heard that before, actually.
Yes. So I was I have a degree, 2 degrees in nutrition. My mom was a nutritionist, so I decided I'll follow her footsteps. But I was not passionate about the work. Okay. I liked the science, but I was not passionate about the work. And so that's why I went back to school. So follow your passion. If you're really passionate about something, follow your passion. And the third one is, don't worry too much about what your future will hold, because it's up to you to develop that future on your own, right? So if you don't like your job, that's okay. You can always get another one, especially when you're young, and you can test things. Sometimes parents, especially Asian parents, I come from an Asian family, Asian parents are so concerned. You got to get a technical degree, you got to get math, you got to, right? And then you have to go get your master's degree. It's interesting because in Microsoft, we don't ask for degrees anymore, right? We don't. It's not required. It's an optional field, right? In recruiting, so it's not as important, because we've found many, many years after they graduate, it doesn't matter what school they graduate in. So I think we have to soften up our stance towards, being so hard-lined about if you have a degree in X, you're going to get X career. But the reality is careers are not straight lined.
The world's changed. I mean, this is really, really valuable, both in terms of just getting on. And I think one thing, important thing you said there is that you can take a step back. You can say I made a mistake.
Yeah.
And the nutrition thing wasn't for you, and therefore, and certainly from an Asian culture point of view, and a lot of it comes down to parents and outlooks. And so, here you are, HR leader in technology, giving advice to parents who are trying to, with anxiety about kids and future and jobs. What's your advice in terms of how you facilitate your children's careers?
Again, for me, it's like I want them to do what they love, what they really want to be in, and how I want my kids to be able to focus on the careers they want, or the work that they love to do, because then they'll get a different pop in terms of how they do their job. They'll be excited, happy, and it's only them who can decide what that is. It's not the parents. The parents are there to guide them, but we're not making decisions on their behalf. And I've seen so many people. I mean, I've been in HR a long time. So many people who are so unhappy in their jobs. And I asked them, well, why are you staying? Like, why don't you go do something else if you're passionate about that? Well, I can't because I've built a whole structure around this. I have degrees in this. Well, I did it. I threw away all my degrees and started over. And I'm very happy with what I did. But I think there's always a fear that if I change, I may not get what I want. But you're not happy with what you have anyway.
Correct.
So
it's fascinating. You reincorporate some of the things you said at the beginning, which is around know your DNA and be true to yourself.
Yes.
Have the courage to take the leap or try something. If you take a misstep, then go backwards.
Yeah.
And then really the fact that there are people around you to help you.
Yes.
Just to thank you so much for the insights. I've got one last question.
Sure.
What's the one question that you wish I'd asked that I've not asked?
Oh, that's a really good question. What advice would I give to my younger self?
Over to you, Annella.
I think,
don't be a nutritionist.
I think I would say, first of all, I would go into the workforce much earlier. Like, go to the workforce much earlier. Get a job really early in your life so you understand the value of working.
Yes.
Secondly, don't be afraid to challenge your parents when they want you to do something. And challenge it respectfully.
Yeah.
But if your parents say you need to get a degree in engineering, and you're like, hey, I don't want to get a degree in engineering, don't be afraid to challenge that. Because at the end of the day, if you're not happy and passionate about what you're doing, you're not going to do well. And so that would be my advice to my younger self.
Sage words to finish on. Thank you so much for your time, Annella.
You're welcome. It was really fun. Thank you. I really enjoyed this.